How we doing, folks? Good evening. It is Sunday night, REDFELLAS, and as you can see, you're joined by me, who'll be hosting tonight. Unlike Grizz, is he held up with something tonight, won't make it. But listen, it's Sunday night. We're chatting about Liverpool. Let's get into it. And before we start, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night. Maybe officially, you could be in your bed as well. To everyone listening or rewatching, we love it. We appreciate it. And yeah. Tonight we're going to have we're going to have as much as we can brief breakdown of the preseason games so far. And to do that, I'm delighted to be joined by the usual suspects and Keith Cross and Steve. Firstly, Keith, how you doing, mate? How's the holiday? You're looking very well, but to be fair, you're always looking very well. So I don't know if I should say that. Is that maybe just the standard practice? But how's things anyway?
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Feeling sun-kissed. Bought another nice shirt out, as you can see. Very much still on my summer holidays. I'm going to Italy next week, so catch me out there in Sicily. But apart from that, no. Very living very well. Just knowing that preseason results don't really matter. So I live with that.
Very good point. And yourself, Steve, how are you doing, mate?
I'm great, mate. Yeah, enjoying the good weather. Although tomorrow promises to be apocalyptic, according to the television, doesn't it? So, but mate, it's all good here. Everything's great, like Keith says. Watching the pre-season games with interest, and really not bothered what the score is. It's just looking for little things to sort of to look for, little things to remember, little things to buzz off, little things to be excited about, ready for the next season, really. So, let's not be watching the score and worrying about that. I agree completely.
Yeah, I mean, I've been actually saying I was at a wedding yesterday. I feel better now. It's a bit, not the greatest this morning. I'll be honest. Had an hour and a half drive back from Eyemouth. Great wedding last night. The wedding band, top wedding band. The tunes were out, very very good. But on that, I was discussing as well. It's like I remember when we never won one pre-season game, and I think we won the league that year. I think we played Sporting Lisbon with Bruno Fernandes. I think it was a draw in the last game, and we won the league. So kind of add to your point, Steve, that you can take from pre-season what you will. But on the two games so far, and on the snippets we've seen from training, I'll start with yourself, Keith. What's your overall thoughts, and who's maybe impressed you throughout these games?
Yeah, so first of all, I've just got like an overarching thoughts with preseason in general. I definitely think it matters more to teams that didn't really have the season that they needed or wanted. So you can see there's a lot more hype around at the moment about certain teams and their performances. I look at Arsenal with Jesus and United winning and Spurs as well. I think with us, it's just been really good to have all our like main 11 and our squad members available and training from pretty much day one. Many pre-seasons over the years, you've had situations where players have played at World Cups or the players have played in Copa Americas and they've had to have extended breaks and join the party 1, 2, 3 weeks down the line. And the fact that pretty much everybody's been able to work with each other from the get-go is going to be it's probably one of my favorite things of this preseason. And in terms of what I've seen so far on the pitch, it's been interesting for sure. Obviously, it's only been 2 games. I thought the Palace game, we looked like things have started to click into gear. But the one thing that never goes, even when we are all over the place trying to get fitness, is the pressing. I always love seeing us. We press quite wildly, almost like the old Klopp days when it's the first couple of games of preseason, just because we're trying to get into it. So it's always interesting to watch us do that. Interesting as well to see where players are potentially going to be positioned this season. I've noticed that Naby Keita has predominantly been positioned on the right-hand side. Curtis Jones, interestingly, has been very much positioned on the left. Gives me indication that obviously Jones and Thiago are definitely going to be sharing those responsibilities. Carvalho essentially having the cameo on Luis Diaz's position was also very interesting to see. But most importantly was actually seeing a number 9 making number 9 runs in Darwin Nunez, which I'm sure we'll get into. But that's also been a real interesting thing to see because I'm not used to it at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've got a wee bullet point to discuss on that as well. But regarding the lineup and individuals on that, Keith, is there anyone who from those 2 games you've went very impressed straight off? And as well, is there anyone you'd maybe say who's not had the greatest start?
Well, I thought that young goalkeeper, what's it? Pardon me, I forget his name. The one that started against Palace,
Harvey Davis.
Harvey Davis. He's all right with his feet, isn't he? He's a little
Hmm.
playmaker. He's very, very confident on the ball. I thought, as a ball playing goalkeeper, it seems to look like we're churning these type of keepers out. So I was actually really impressed with how confident he looked and how short he was on the ball, spraying it left, spraying it right. He was the one for me at the moment that came out where I was kind of like, okay, didn't see that one coming. So yeah, I have to give it to him. Harvey Davis has been the standout. I like that cameo for a young keeper to do that as well. It's good. I like the confidence. Be interested to see if he actually does it in obviously Premier League game, but even so, packed out stadium with 40,000 people, nothing to shy away from.
And that's a trend as well. We mentioned, like, obviously Kelleher's improvement from the Arsenal 5-5 to inevitably when he's actually played for us. The difference in his ability with his feet then and his confidence. And I know he was he played field at one point, but I feel like it's a very good positive to have for us in general. People have conversations about this. We're not going to get into like the position of a goalkeeper tonight, but that is one thing I do say, like, your ability in the ball does separate the probably brilliant or maybe very, very good keepers nowadays to the great keepers, because I'd say 95% of top teams or 90% will play it from the back. So you need to be competent. That is a very good point, Keith. What about yourself, Steve? What's your thoughts on pre-season in general been so far, and any standouts?
Difficult to gauge. Certainly the first game with 21 players being on the pitch over sort of 31 minutes. Absolutely no cohesion at all. No understanding of where your teammates were. No tactics could be played. It was about mileage. It was about getting miles on the clock rather than playing a football game to win. Obviously, it stung a bit because it was Man United, and you don't like to concede anything to them. But I think Klopp would be more worried about the score from the game at the AXA the previous Thursday than he would about that. It just doesn't register with him pre-season at all. It's about familiarity. It's about getting little partnerships going again. It's about getting to what it's like to touch and feel of football on the pitch, and that's what pre-season should be. And you made the point about, previously when we spoke about this, that we went through a season where we didn't win a game and we went and won the league. Well, in the 70s and 80s, when they used to win everything, they never won a game in pre-season either. So it's really not important. It depends on, like Keith says, it depends on what your season is. If your season is winning a PC with a trophy sticking out the top of it in a pre-season game, that's what your highlight's going to be. That's fine, enjoy that. But we want to be involved in May when they're handing out the prizes, not now. It's all about familiarity. So standouts for me, I think Carvalho has been really good. I think we all were really excited to see him. He's not let us down. He's really, really comfortable on the ball. He sees an awful lot of stuff. And I think there's a little bit of one-upmanship and in the right way going to be between him and Harvey Elliott this season, where they're both really young. They're both playing in expansive roles where they're looking to be creative, and they both want to usurp each other and be better than each other. And that friendly competition in the squad can only be good for the team. I think Carvalho's ready now. I don't think he's been bought for sort of a year, 18 months time. He clearly has got the ability to play now. So it's really interesting. I think the left-hand side is a kind of an amalgamation of Thiago, Jones and Carvalho initially, with Carvalho being able to play more advanced, as Keith alluded to before. It's really, really, really good to see. And when we played well in the first half against Palace. I thought some of the passing movements were really good. The goal was really clever. Harvey Elliott's pullback for Henderson to score. So Elliott and Carvalho have been the standouts for me. Shout out to Vandenberg, who came on and played really well alongside Virgil. Where did that come from? Because prior to him going out on loan, the guy had no pace, no ability to read the game. He's developed loads in his time at Preston, so fair play to him. That might just free up the chance of selling Nat Phillips, because I think he needs first team football. And Vandenberg could quite easily be the sort of fourth or fifth, or the fifth centre back, because he'll be
That was your
nurtured by
pick
the
as well,
people
Steve.
around
That
him.
was your pick to keep. Remember, we'd done the review show about the keep, loan or sell, and we had that chat. And fair play. I mean, maybe that's what we should say the Ben Davis point was. That's the goodwill. We bought Ben Davis. That kind of allowed a slot for Vandenberg. Or I can't exactly remember the details, but that gave him the experience. So
Did.
it's a funny world.
And they
It's a
loved him.
funny
They
world.
loved him down there. Came away from Preston with great reviews, although he played predominantly as a right back. You're still a defender, aren't you? So there's options there as well. And there was a lot thought of him when he came to the club. He never really lived up to any early potential we thought he might have. So everybody deserves a second chance. He's been away. He's learnt a bit about the English game. He looks 100 times better for the experience. Maybe now's the time, if Nat Phillips fancies first team football, to use that as a catalyst to make that decision happen.
And think sometimes, Steve and Keith, I think you'll agree, some footballers have a journey where it's a lot smoother than others. And maybe they get a bit of a fright or a shock to the system when they realise that actually, if this doesn't quite work out, and listen, I'm not saying the championship level is a bad level at all. There's some players on there a lot of money in championship. But I think maybe that does send a shock to the system a little bit. Like, do you know what? This fairy tale of mine could end very quickly. And I always find it interesting because I think in situations like that, some people sink, some people swim. So hopefully it works out for him. But on that, I'll kind of add my little part since there's only 3 of us on who I thought has been really good. It's kind of obvious answer or probably a predicted answer, but I thought Harvey Elliott has been good again. Probably expected. He's similar to the way he started last season. I just think he's a good footballer, and I think Klopp has a lot of trust in him. Don't think he's going to play him every game, but I think again you can see why he trusts him so much and why, in general, Liverpool have bought him. And to me, I think he will. He's still on that good trajectory to reach his potential. We don't know where the ceiling is yet, but again, I've just got to add, I thought he was impressive. I thought it was really funny though as well and ironic that Henderson's goal, in my head, it was like, I'll have to look at the heat map again, not had the chance to tonight, but it's funny how it might just be my memory playing tricks on me, but when Elliott plays and there's a bit of a different movement there, when we've seen on the right side, it's, for my mind, it always seems to free up a little bit more space for Henderson to come on. I'm not saying he's not had those shots in other games, but again, it adds the options we've got with different players playing and interchanging. And I know I thought Elliott for me again was good. Probably an easy answer compared to, I think your shouts are both better. But just while we're on that last kind of point on this one, guys, and then we'll kind of talk about maybe. You mentioned, Keith, the forward runs, playing to certain players' strengths and tactically how we'll look to go forward this season. But just on watching Nunez in these small sample sizes, what is your general thoughts on it? I'll start with you, Steve, since Keith started the last one. What's your thoughts in general on Nunez?
I think the first thing we need to do is put some perspective on this. The guy's played 75 minutes of football in the Liverpool shirt, and he's been called out for Darwin noodles and all that nonsense on Twitter. Let him do it, because when he scores goals, that the apology will be louder than the noise we're hearing now. I take Keith's point completely. He is making typical number 9 runs. This is a two-way street, to put this right for me. It's not about us learning to play with Darwin Nunez. It's about both learning to play with each other, because he will have to change certain assets of his game, certain facets of his game to play more effectively for Liverpool. But we also need to recognise where he wants the ball. Good centre forwards often tell you where they want the ball, and you've got good midfielders that they'll give him there. Like, the best example of that would be sort of a Kevin De Bruyne would know exactly how to find his forwards, and we need to get that. Thiago's a great guy to do that. He's a brilliant exponent of using the ball, and Elliott's got it too in terms of the direct passing. So I'm not worried about Nunez, and I don't think anybody should be. It's absolutely far too early to say anything like that. Listen, we signed Ian Rush back in the day, and he asked to leave because it wasn't going well for him. And
I listened to that the other day. I didn't, and listen, I know people think I'm younger, but I'm not that young. I didn't realise that. I actually didn't realise that there was quite a big following for that to happen, Steve, if I'm not wrong. Like, that was a genuine belief.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I'll sort of go through the story very quickly before I hand over to Keith. He went to Bob Paisley and said, I want to leave. Bob Paisley said, right, you're on the transfer list. So he went and played really hard to get out of the club, went and raised his game. And then Bob Paisley called him in and said, right, there's your raise. And he said, can I come off the transfer list? And Bob Paisley said, you were never on it, son. So he played him absolutely to the T there. But the point I tried to make, and I got quite a big reaction on Twitter to this, is don't judge people. They need time to bed in. They need time to settle in. They need time to understand. This is not the club he was at before. This is a completely different level. There's so many more things that we're going to ask of him that he's never even dreamt he'd have to do as a footballer before. So for me, no drama. The jury's not even out. It's just a case of a young lad trying to find his way in a new football club. Doesn't speak the language. He gets translated to on the pitch via Thiago constantly. So that can't be easy. Someone shouted at you across the pitch what to do. That can't be easy. So I like most of the Liverpool fans I know and I associate with, are not concerned at all. We've seen it all before. There's no drama. There's no big. It's not big news. It's just noise from the rival fans because Lukaku, Pogba, Maguire, or Kepa, those are big signings that flopped, and we're very quick to tell them that they flopped. So what they're looking for is a hole in Liverpool's operating system for transfers, because there hasn't been any. There's never been anything to call us out for. So in 75 minutes, they've decided to line of sight goes on Darwin Nunez. Well, let's talk about Darwin Nunez after 12 months, like we talk about Lukaku doing one to Inter and saying I should never have left. There's no drama here at all for me, guys. I don't know what you think, Keith. No drama.
Yeah, you know what? Like, as I said, for me, a lot of this stuff is manufactured deliberately. Now, it's not. At one stage, it was maybe a bit of a laugh, a bit of banter, but now I feel like it's a little bit engineered. To deliberately put the pressure on a player to from the get-go. Everybody knows it's preseason. Everybody knows that preseason doesn't matter. It's all true, but a lot of these channels have been desperate for traffic since the last 4 weeks, right? That can't be denied. And what's the best way to get traffic is to chat absolute nonsense about a Liverpool player. I think it's less to focus on, the chances he may or may not be scoring, and more to focus on the type of influences he's already having on this team, which is going to be quite significant going into the season. I think the first thing that's absolutely clear as day is that for the first time in a long time, centre-backs are going to have to be worried about a striker through that middle. And, you could see with Man United, they played quite a high line in that game, Palace as well. As I said, I'm convinced that more and more teams this season, defenders will be playing high lines. They would have seen the success that Liverpool have had from winning offside traps because of the fact that VAR exists. I think Liverpool cottoned on to that, quite early on, but I think more and more teams will see that because it's just such an advantage to have technology to basically help you in certain situations. And as long as you can train your back four to be in unison and in sequence to make sure they play that offside line, I do believe I'll be interested to see the stats to see if I've been proven right about this. I'll be interested to see if there's more of an uptick in offsides won this season. And with that comes the new problem that they're going to have to face. Everything historically was played in front of them, and a lot of the runs came from angles, right? And almost it felt at times, even though we scored the second most amount of goals, it almost felt like we were found out. What Nunez is doing through that middle of the park now is making centre-backs now have to think about the situation that's going on in the middle of the park. Another thing that I saw, which was quite interesting, is link-up opportunities between him and Mo Salah in particular. I kind of saw them trying to do a few things where Salah fizzes it to Nunez lays it back off as Salah makes that run. That's going to be a lot more of an option to go past this season, I think. Because I don't think Sadio Mane last season through the middle was necessary, or Diogo Jota was necessarily looking to play that 1-2 type of football, like layoff type of almost target man-esque.
Yeah, focal point, play off.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't really there for the focal point. They were there to I believe, make runs in behind. So I think as a centre forward, he's going to be much more natural at doing that as well and being that focal point. And his ability in the air, I think, as well. Again, this is something we've never had before. And I'll be interested to see over the next few, as we kind of start to lock this team down, what his presence is going to be like in the air and how much that's going to give another issue to think about. I think Liverpool scored the most amount of goals from set pieces last season, and that was with the players that we had before. Now we brought in this Darwin Nunez, and the chat, I would love for anybody in the chat to tell me how tall he is. But that's more height in that box as well. So
I think 6'2" or 6'3".
Really interesting.
6'3" is Conroy, you're right.
6'3", exact. So Lisandro Martinez is 5'9", so I'm sure he's going to have fun at Old Trafford winning those aerial battles when we go to United in the third game of the season. So again, and there's also the options in terms of Luis Diaz. Again, another situation where Diaz is, for me, needs to release the ball a little bit more, a little bit quicker, Diaz is going to have that option in front of him now. How that play is going to link up. Didn't quite see that in the first few games, but again, these are going to be the kind of things that I will be looking out for in terms of his impact in the team. But no question, Liverpool come into this new season with, for the first time ever, with a completely unknown. Teams are not going to be able to figure us out. And with Klopp being able to have, again, I keep banging on about this, but it's just such a focal point. The fact that he has effectively been able to work with Nunez, Salah, and Diaz from the start suggests to me that he's going to catch a lot of teams on the hop this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said, Keith, I agree with a lot of that, to be honest. And for me, Nunez, again, just off the bat, it's a very, very small sample size. And I know people are desperate. Some people love Twitter at this time of year, addicted to it. I'll be honest, I'm kind of take or leave it most of the year. But this is a break from like being obsessed with football as we are for the rest of the footballing year. So I try my best to not be absolutely infatuated by it at this point. But with regard to Nunez, I think for me, it's you're just going to feel it out. He's going to get used to the team. Like let's not kid ourselves. I know he's not technically this unbelievable player, but I think there's numerous examples of players who worked a system and worked really well. And I think what he has to offer, as you said, his height, his ability to run in behind. I think that's another thing, Keith. See if there is a low block, but you've got a striker who's willing to run the channels and take these centre backs who they can't just sit in the box and head everything away. That's another issue because then it moves a team around. The centre back doesn't know if they should go with you. Do they call the full back back? That in itself causes problems. And he is a willing runner, right, who's also got that area ability. So I think you might see him when he's stacked in the area with the balls coming in, the crosses coming in, or spreading out wide to move an opposition out of the position. And I think you'll see that. So I think your point about the high line, absolutely, Keith. But also I think even low blocks, it'll work. I honestly do. Like, I think the reason is, right, for me, Nunez genuinely doesn't even have to be unbelievable. See, as long as he's effective, that could be the difference. It's pretty simple. It turns those draws into wins. It's got the potential to do that. So for me, that's the way I look at it. And I think he can be that. I think you'll see that. I think in certain games when we're all going and it's the first team, I think you'll see the amount of chances that this guy will get. And I think rival fans are desperate, just desperate because they, as you said, Steve, they've made their own terrible signs that have just not worked out. And because we've done so well previously, they're desperate. They're desperate for us to find a chink in that armour. And I just think he's going to get that many chances that it's just not going to be the case. And I think, as you say, when it's the first team, the link up, it'll be great. It's just a small sample size. But if anything, I think was it you who said, Keith, just stay off Twitter when it's about it because it's you could copy and paste the graphs before the game starts and finishes, to be honest.
But there's a lot of changes going on at other clubs as well. I think it's there's a lot of change. And I think that is kind of quite interesting as well, because you can look at it in one way. And again, everybody's excited from the signings that Spurs have made, United are making, Chelsea have made signings. Everybody's kind of been very active in this market. Everyone's kind of gone back to post-pandemic situations. But from ourselves, I think there's a real buzz about the fact that we too come into this as an unknown, right? So we've been at the top of our game, and yet clubs are still going to have to figure us out again from an attacking sense, while also being able to have kept the defense and the midfield solid as we have done. So I think that's what's also quite we should be a lot more excited. It may feel a little bit like we got our business done early, everybody's else doing everything around us. Rival fans are taking preseason a lot more seriously. So there can be an element of the fan that may make you think, you know what, should we be a little bit concerned? But when you think about it, we kept the best player in the Premier League, signed more players, and actually to kept the best players that we needed to. It makes this situation from us probably one of the most exciting prospects and slightly dark horse underdog in a weird way, because ultimately people are expecting, well, now the Spurs have got their players, they're going to challenge for the title. Now Chelsea are going to close the gap and now Man United are back and they're going to do X, Y, and Z. So it allows the conversations to happen around those clubs. When we get to 10 games into the season, I reckon everybody's going to be talking about us.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're very good points, mate. Just with regard then, Steve, on we spoke about Nunez there and the forward runs and the differences to the play. With regard to the last two games, do you think there will be any additional tactical changes? And as I say, the way we play me and Keith have touched on that and yourself there. But for example, a Carvalho playing probably a kind of hybrid, I don't know if you want to say hybrid 8/10. You know what I mean? Kind of in that central pocket a bit more, so Robertson occupies the left wing, or whoever's at left back really bombs out there. Do you think we'll see other changes like that, and how do you think that'll go going forward this season, especially with the 5 sub rule as well? Like there might be in-game changes like that.
Yeah, I think the Carvalho one, we've all spoken about this before, and I know Grizz and I agreed that we might see
Of course, Grizz does. Bloody hell, he's been shouting about that for 3 months.
an additional body.
Carvalho scores, right? Grizz will not even come on the show. He'll be celebrating that much.
We are right when we say we think, well, we're not right, but we have an opinion that we'll see him play further up the pitch as like you said, a hybrid 8/10, because he's got that ability. He linked with Mitrovic really well, and there's some similarities in the target man scenario there. I think Nunez has got a lot more to his game in terms of mobility and running intelligence than Mitrovic has got. You kind of, what you see with Mitrovic is what you get. It's a case of, can you stop it? And obviously in the Championship, they couldn't. It's interesting that the Elliott heat map was mentioned by you, Conroy, in that he got beyond Salah so many times, and Henderson doesn't really do that. But he got round the back in advance of Salah half a dozen times in both games, which is really pleasing to see. And the thing that we all speak about, which is the most impossible thing to defend in the Premier League, is when Manchester City get in round the back of you and they pull the ball back into the box and they've got willing runners and they just score goal after goal after goal doing this. Are we starting to see a deliberate tactical ploy to add that to our game? Because that's how you deal with a low block. You go out wide and you use the ball more effectively than
City are the experts at that. They generally are.
yeah. And instead of
experts
spamming
at that.
balls into the first man at the box, who just heads them out like we do sometimes when we get a bit lost in terms of trying to break teams down. So maybe we've learned a little bit from City in that regard, because they don't struggle against the teams we struggle against. They struggle against us from time to time, and they struggle against teams that are
Funnily enough, Spurs have
Spurs,
got a great record.
because
Amazing record.
both of those teams against City are brave. I've been saying to anyone who's been prepared to listen for a couple of years now, and I've tried it on a few, trust me. If you're brave against City and you leave players high up the pitch like Chelsea did in the Champions League final, their centre-backs can't join in. When their centre-backs become auxiliary centre midfielders and they play football totally in your half, you are in all kinds of trouble. And in 4-1 defeat at Anfield, that's exactly what they did to us. They pushed the centre-backs right up into the centre circle and they played all of their football in our half. If you're brave and you leave people high and wide, you leave runners up top, they can't do that, and you can get at them. And I think more teams need to recognise that. Look at West Ham and Aston Villa at the end of the season. Both of them had them on toast, and then went in at half time, came out and just sat on the edge of the box and tried to, we hold what we have. And you can't do that against Manchester City. You've got to keep going. You've got to be incessant. So maybe the things we're seeing, the position of Carvalho, the slightly different runs that Elliott's making in terms of getting advanced of Salah, Trent popping up in that inside inverted position
It's like
again.
Yeah, he's definitely done that before, though. This is not a new thing. Like he's done
No,
that quite a bit
but
last season as well. No, I'm not saying you're saying that, Keith. I saw people saying that. I was like, he's done that a few times. This is not a new.
Well, you referenced it. You referenced it a few weeks ago when we did a show. But what happens when Elliott gets advanced to Salah? Salah still wants the ball because Salah still wants to score goals. They're never going to change that. But what there is a 20-yard space behind him where there's a pocket of space. And that's where Trent's getting into. So it'd be really interesting to see when he starts understanding Nunez's runs. You wouldn't give the ball to anybody in world football right now to pick out a man, whether it be aerial or on the floor. You'd go a long way to find anyone who can do it better than Trent. So it bodes really well for us. I think there's a definite change in our system in terms of committing bodies forward and pulling balls back into the box. That's worked. They've worked on that. Matip let the ball go to Elliott. He didn't even look. He pulled the ball back into the space. Henderson comes on. It's a side foot, but it's a good side foot and it's a great goal. And I think for us to, we lost 2 games and didn't win the league, but we probably draw 7 or 8, and it's the draws that kill you. So to go and add a different facet to your attack in angles and bodies is for me, that's the first thing I picked up on in pre-season.
Yeah, and it's good as well, as you say, it's a different facet, Steve. It's not like we're ripping out the old and bringing the new. There's, especially, I think the 5 sub rule allows you to change your tactics as well quite a bit if you want to. And we mentioned the 4-2-4 last season, adding a tactical interplay like that. To me, I think This is what I want to see. Sometimes I think we're too much stuck on this is what we're doing and that's it. There's no argument. Footballers can be flexible. You obviously don't want to overdo it, so you're doing 4 or 5 things in a match. But I think our old play is not gone as well. Like there's still an options there as well. We've still got the players to facilitate that. So I think it's very exciting. Keith, is there anything else you wanted to add on regarding the tactics? I know you mentioned a bit going forward on that just before we finish this segment. Just wanted to give you the chance if there's anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, no, for me, as I said, it's the interplay between. There's going to be a lot more creative midfielders this season. I think with Fabio Carvalho, with Harvey Elliott. I wonder if there's going to be games where Klopp is going to be chasing the game and will, use the 5 sub rule to his advantage and turn maybe like a 2 in the middle with an 8 into 2 8s and a holding midfielder. He's done that quite a few times already. And what Carvalho and Elliott's going to bring to the table in those situations is going to be fascinating to see. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold's positioning in this another new tactics was always interesting. He again seems a lot more aggressive, slightly wider earlier on than inverted this time, but would be interesting to see where he comes. And he's going to be the most interesting player this season because, last season he almost came in, almost played as a midfielder as such. I think this year he's going to get the opportunity to release the ball a lot earlier and a lot quicker with the number 9 running through. So I wonder if he will take up a more wide position this season so he can start putting those balls in and behind defenses into the space where Nunez is going to run into, because he's going to have someone that's going to be making those runs this season. And also even from the byline, is he going to be looking to go further up, or he's going to start hitting crosses earlier from deep with the fact that he's got height in there? So his positioning and how he operates in that right-hand side is going to be fascinating to see. Remember, he is our most creative player, easily the best player, in my opinion, in his position. So how he kind of adapts to having a number 9 in front of him is going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, maybe mix up from being centrally, but then spinning out as an overlap now and again as well, because people forget he can do that as well. He's not as much as a sprint down the line and cross in, but he's got that ability to get an angle from there. He's got quite a lot of assists from there. I think as well, it's interesting that I'm not going to go on about it, but we all love Diaz, and I think people are forgetting about how good Diaz could be. And with all this worry in different positions, I think ultimately it frees up space for someone. And if you think we've got Nunez causing issues like that, either Salah, who's probably still going to get man marked to the best ability, I think it offers so much space. I think you remember the Chelsea game in the League Cup. I know it was Trevor Chalobah, who actually, overall, he got done, but he's a young guy, and you know what, he is a bit inexperienced. But to me, I still feel like Diaz is the shout that no one's thought. Diaz is, for me, he's going to be scary with pre-season. Scary. So just thought I'd mention that before we move on to the next topic, which, just following on the topic of pre-season, guys, I wanted to just mention a little bit about injuries. I did, obviously, Steve thankfully updated me on Alisson before we came on, but it was just to discuss the injuries following the pre-season, which was Jota, who's got a issue, and Ox, who unfortunately was actually playing quite well, and he came off in the 42nd minute. So, Steve, I'll just get your thoughts on Jota's injury first, and I know you mentioned it's a reoccurring one. So how do you think we should feel about this one? Do you think any concerns going forward?
Do you know what's quite interesting? And this is in football in general. Players are turning down scans at the moment, and I believe that should have been done on international duty, and it wasn't picked up properly. So we brought him back and we've rehabilitated him to the best we can, and then it's broken down. We'll know what grade it is. We probably already do know what grade it is. It's not been communicated yet as to the time frame he's going to be out, and there's no reason to, because the fans already in meltdown over Darwin Nunez. They don't need to do that over Diogo Jota as well. It's good PR on the club's part. It's an issue because it's a reoccurring injury, so it needs some real deep rehabilitation, and it needs a lot of work to put that right. And there might not be a quick solution for that. There generally isn't with players that have reoccurring injuries. Sports science has moved on a long way since we had Michael Owen and his hamstrings at the club, but the idea that you need to spend time with these people remains the same. So with regards to Jota, I think if 2 years ago this had happened, Conway would all be like in meltdown. We would be in meltdown because we'd be like, we've got no players. But it's not an area we're short in. It's not an area where we're going to struggle. And we've got bodies. So whilst he's a really, really crucial and important part of the first team squad, 20 goals a season, as a sort of a coming off the bench player, which he was predominantly last season, is a tremendous output. We've got to get him right, but we've given ourselves, with the signings we've got and the players we've got, we've given ourselves time to do that. There's obviously something that's in his preparation that's causing the problem. There's something he's doing that's putting a strain in the same area. So they may have to look at him, the things he's doing, and change his routines a little bit. So it's kind of a we don't know at the moment. Doesn't sound like it's sort of 6 months type of thing. They're not talking with that fear and dread in their voice. They're just saying there is an issue that we need to deal with, and we'll go away and we'll do what we need to do, and we'll get him sorted. But if he doesn't play for the first month of the season while we get him where he needs to be, which would be the right thing to do, then we can absorb that, because we've got 7 or 8 decent options up front. We've been talking about the squad, and we haven't even mentioned Bobby Firmino yet. That's where we're at. So it's a situation where we can afford to say, right,
good problems to have, Steve. Good problems to have,
mate. Yeah, absolutely. We're not talking Ricky Lambert and Balotelli, are we? And Fabio Barini. I mean,
I always felt sorry for Lambert. I did always feel sorry for Lambert. I felt like if you were him, everyone would have went for that move. If you know what I mean.
Of course.
And it was one of them. It's like he was actually quite good for Southampton in the Premier League. But that was obviously his ceiling. I just felt sorry for him because he literally went from Bristol Rovers to that level. So I think he'd done really well to get to that level, and it's just but he'll
always be able to say in the pub on a Sunday afternoon, I play for Liverpool. Nobody can take that away from him.
I've got a soft spot for Ricky Lambert because, I think, do you know what? Everyone in that position would have done the same, so sorry, Steve.
Yeah, of course. I would. If they knocked on the door, mate, I'd sign for them and then not played. You just wouldn't you? But we've got the options. We're not looking in, but we're not in Fabio Barini territory, are we? We've got really good options. So the nice thing about having the squad depth we've got is we can allow players who get injured to be rehabilitated properly. We do not need to rush them back, we've got a terrible history of doing that to our players, by the way, and it doesn't bode well for the future. So I'm not, and I don't think the club's particularly stressed about it. I'm pretty chilled out about the whole thing pre-season at the moment. I'm not got any sort of stress in me at all, not like the rest of them. I couldn't care less.
The League, Steve, that'll be different, mate. We'll be having
first week of the Premier League, mate,
Sunday night for 3 hours.
Yeah, and you won't be able to speak to me the night before, and on the day, mate, it'll be bricks, won't it? Do you know what I mean? So it's it's unfortunate because he could do with the pre-season, because obviously didn't get as much game time as he would have liked last year. But we'll sort it, and it's just get him the right treatment, get him rehabilitated properly, and strengthening and conditioning is going to be key here. How we put that right?
Yeah. Just on that then, Keith, I was going to ask something on Jota, but I wanted to get your thoughts on Ox, because this is always a bit of a indifferent topic, a mixed reviews topic. But I had to follow the game, the first half on my phone at work on was it Friday the Palace game, and there was a lot of positives for Ox at the start of that game. A lot of people saying he's looking sharp, his touches were good. What was your thoughts on him getting the injury when he did?
So just to clarify, what type of injury is it? Is it a bad one? Is he looking to? Was it just a niggle?
For me, I don't know if Steve wants to confirm. I thought it was a hamstring around that area from the last time I checked.
Yeah.
So it looks
That's
like it could just be a couple of weeks, maybe a month.
Yeah. So I thought he looked bright, and I thought he looked just like Ox looked when Mane and Salah went to AFCON. I wonder if the birth of his child was, if maybe they went through some stuff afterwards, which meant that Klopp didn't choose him as much in the second half of the season, because it seemed a bit strange. I thought he played really well in January and then just didn't hardly get put into the team again. So, for me, I don't see I don't see a rush to just let Oxlade-Chamberlain go. I believe isn't he coming up into his last year, into his contract, last 18 months. He's such a versatile football player. I thought he looked great. And, again, the knockback will be annoying, but, hopefully it's just a knockback and we see a lot more of him this season, because, as I said, Klopp didn't really explain why he made passing statements about why he didn't play him and how, he's a criminal, Klopp is a criminal for not playing the likes of...
That Southampton game, was it, when he played Jones and stuff? Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
So, I think he's a good hand to have around the club as well. The guy is now a tenured veteran, and I think, he gets along well with the players, and he's just a good lad to have around. So bit of a shame that he picked up that hamstring injury, but I think he'll be back. I think just to touch on the Jota situation, I actually think it might be good news for Jota. Actually, I think it gives him a time to kind of sneak in under the radar as the season started to kick on, and actually get a few opportunities to be an impact sub off the bench before fighting for that place. I thought towards the end of the season, a lot of people were a bit on his back a little bit, if you will. I think even he could probably admit that he wasn't at the levels that he was during the Christmas period. So I think, some time away from the limelight and the opportunity to kind of sneak in from the underground, I think will do him well.
I think as well, Keith, the 5 sub thing, I think Jota's one of your best examples of. I think Jota, for me, actually, people do underrate what his ceiling could be. I'm not saying he's going to be, like best player in the Premier League, but I do think he's very, very effective. Like, people are talking about the poor end of the season, but what did he finish with? 17 Premier League goals, or roughly about that.
15,
and there's a lot of games where he wasn't very good in that. So if he can get that level and consistency up, I think he's quite up for what he does for someone who's like, for his height and round some of the defences in the Premier League. I think he causes a lot of problems. I think his movement's right up there when he's on it. I think his movement's brilliant. So I agree. I think this could be a good moment for him. And I also feel like the 5 subs will suit him, because I think you can tell someone like Jota, who I think he'll start some games, don't get me wrong, but I think if you say every game you're going to get 30 minutes to come on, or start a game 60 minutes, whatever, I think Jota is someone who could be crucial in games that we can't win, along with the other players. And I think it'll give him the chance to kind of rejuvenate himself. Like, see, when he first came in from Wolves, and he was like, I was going to swear there, but he was very on form. He seemed like he was being very clinical at the time. I think he can get there. I do love Jota. I think he's that he's one of my favourites. But on both Ox and Jota, you mentioned the health and recovery there, Steve. Do you think I'm right in saying we spoke about Keita a lot last season and the changes put in place for him by the new recovery, or some of the new ones who came in? I forgot the name. It's that very difficult name to pronounce. Do you think it will be helpful with regard to both these situations that we have got those changes previously in our health and recovery team? Because for what I've seen so far, they've made a difference. So hopefully that would be the case with Jota. And I know Ox is a hamstring, but we talk about Jota as being a reoccurring problem. Hopefully that can make a difference.
You'd like to think so. We're all different. We're built differently and have different strains on our bodies. And these guys go through the mill in training as well. I mean, you saw the things with the masks on and stuff pre-season, and it's pretty intense. And you will break people doing things repeatedly, and you'll learn what you can and can't do with people. You'll learn what doesn't work with Jota. So on the day they might do something which puts a strain on the part where it's reoccurring, you might go and do some gym work to strengthen that. So you have to treat them all as they're like machines. You have to treat them all differently. They're all different components that work better in some places than others. And if he's got an issue where we need to protect something, then that's fine. That's pretty standard for football at grassroots level, sort of, jumpers, not quite jumpers for goalposts, but, Ryman standard and county football that have physios, they will know where you can push players and where you can't. So these guys are amazing what they do, and Klopp's alluded to it many times that he's waiting for his smartphone to go so he knows who he can't play at the weekend. And that's not his decision, and he accepts that's part of the process, and that's fine. And they will spend some time with Jota and have a look at why that happens. They'll do things like watch how he lands when he runs and stuff like that. His physical shape, his telemetry is probably the right way to explain that. They'll do all kinds of stuff. They'll know. They'll look at him to the nth degree to understand where the issue is and what the problem is, and how we circumnavigate it so it doesn't happen again. Doesn't mean he can cure it, but you can certainly work on it to prevent it from being an issue.
And the most important thing, like if there's anybody that has an influence over the squad selection from Jurgen Klopp, it is the medical team. Make no mistake about it. You know what I mean? They're like it's the medical team and Jurgen Klopp who pick that squad. And we've in the type of intense football that we play, it's quite remarkable that they keep these boys in such great condition and manage the games. Playing football every 3 days, sometimes every 2 days. The high intensity, and just as much as the physical, dealing with the mental as well. I think Liverpool have been really, really good at that, because to play at this level and to be this consistent. Remember, last season Liverpool lost 4 football matches, There's some teams who would have lost 4 football matches over 2 months, right? You know, to stay at that level consistently takes the mental aptitude as well. And you know, Klopp, what I love the most about his style of management and his philosophy in life, and it could be used in business, it can be used in your own working life, is sometimes people like to take everything on their shoulders. They like to be the one that is the expert on everything, and they like to make all the decisions. But actually, if you learn to delegate, you and learn to say, and one of the things he says all the time is, "I'm not the smartest man in the in the world, but I'm pretty good at what I do." He's basically telling you that delegation ultimately makes you better, because if you delegate to the experts and actually have a team of people around you that buy into the vision and are happy to do the delegated task, you can focus so much more on the football side of things. And that's what Klopp has been able to do at Liverpool for so long. He's actually been able to focus on the football. Yes, he's got an opinion on transfers, medical teams, how they structure. Yes, he's got an opinion on all of those, but he's also got a team. And that team helps to kind of create and develop and bring in the experts who would be worth being in those positions, so that he can actually focus on being the football manager that he is. And actually, by having that time to be the person that he's good at, he's ultimately succeeded in this environment.
You know, I think that's actually an excellent point, Keith, about the delegation and how he trusts. There's a culture of trust, and it's not maybe I need to control everything. He's maybe he's not been that his full career. Maybe more information will come out of that once whatever happens in the future, you know. But what I would say is, even the stuff with Pep Linders recently, you could tell he's definitely delegated points of that to him to do certain things. You can just see, I think you covered it there perfectly. He's creating this culture now. And he obviously, if he got a medical team he trusts and they tell him this, like, I've never understood the logic. I'll ask a footballer if he says he's all right, he'll play. Like 90.99% of footballers are going to say I'm all right anyway. So that is a nonsensical logic that I don't know why former footballers especially, say that all the time. But I'm like, okay, whatever. That to me is not how it should work, because we've got the data nowadays and information. And to me, that makes sense. And the proof is in the pudding. Like, it's working out. We're always going to have some injuries, but I think you can tell that there's been improvement. Unless you guys disagree, I think there has been improvement with regard to injuries. There's always going to be some. It's football. But for me, I think we're making the right decisions. And again, I trust that. And I think that culture, I've always wanted to be a fly in the wall. Do you remember the Being Liverpool documentary, Rodgers, which, you know what, whatever it was.
I try not to.
It was interesting, though, Steve. It was Channel 5 flying the wall. It's never going to happen in this one. It's never going to happen. But I would love to be a fly in the wall. It's not even for like a nosiness of like, oh, the drama, just to see how he operates and how the people around him operate. I've always found it fascinating.
I wonder, I put this to the chat, a question, I suppose, to the chat. Do you think Liverpool will ever, under Jurgen Klopp, will ever participate in an Amazon behind the scenes season documentary? Yes or no? I'll be interested in the chat. And Conroy, for you, like that first question to you, and then to you, Steve. Do you think that Liverpool, and a follow-up question to that is do these things, would it impact anything? Do you feel that it would have an impact on anything? Because City did it, Pep Guardiola did it. I think on the season that they won the league, they did it.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a bit different then, because at the time I felt like they were streets. Well, actually, yeah, no, they were because they won the league the season before, didn't they? I'm sure they did, because it wasn't just after when he finished fourth, because there's no way they would have done it then. I think it's when they won it streets ahead.
Yeah, it was that season. Yeah,
team.
United.
And then that was it 100 points. They won with it, right? I think situationally, Liverpool could have beat Man City then, but league-wise, no one was catching them. I think it maybe be interesting to see if they've done it now. I'll let Steve go now. From me, I think in the past, you've seen with Klopp, I think there was rumours before. I think he actually turned it down that I'm not having them in my area because it could impact, or not even impacts. I think it's just not, he wouldn't be comfortable with it. And I think as much as we have debates, I think Klopp is just very, there's certain things he'll negotiate on. I don't think that's one of them for me. But do you know what? You don't want it to happen, but at the same time you want it, but you don't want it to. But there's a voice in your head, it'd be good though. But you don't want it to. You don't want it to. Stay on, you go.
I'm with you. I'm pretty sure he's been asked and he said no. And I think whilst he's all-encompassing and brings everybody together as a family, which is very clear, he's done that. What we do in the football club stays in the football club, and I think he doesn't want to share or doesn't want to make anybody uncomfortable. You know, in his eyes, your number 9 is as important as the cleaner. You know, that's the message he's given to the football club. So everybody's in this together. We are an unbreakable unit. And he said, I think it's pretty sure he's been asked and said no. Also think the personalities between him and Guardiola are very different. Guardiola likes to play up to the cameras. He does it with his impromptu team talks and extra time and stuff, where he's kind of one-on-one with the guy and he's all like this, and then the thing where he's almost dancing in the changing room, showing the tactics. You know, that works for him.
That works for him after that team in the draft.
Yeah. And that's why Klopp doesn't want to do it, because he can't dance. I've seen Klopp dance on them videos and he's terrible, isn't he? But the thing is, why do that? Why put yourself out there so everyone can see what you do? I know it's very diluted and very watered down, and you don't actually see the nitty-gritty. You don't see the stuff that really counts. But I just think they like what they're doing and they like to be left alone to do it. I just don't see them inviting the TV camera other than LFC TV and some of the channels in from time to time to have a chat with the players. I just don't see them opening up what they do for everyone to see it.
I think that's fair enough. Good question, O'Keefe. That was a great question.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So just
what did the chat say, Conroy? What did the chat say?
Well, the chat, I put a few comments up there, some really good comments. They're saying, I think the publicity, you know, people act different in front of cameras and it might unsettle the dressing room. Sleeping Dragon said, don't need the publicity, what good would come of it. I think that's an interesting point as well, because even Arsenal's documentary, we're all joking in that, but it probably does. I don't know, the Arsenal one for me could go either way. I think they got fourth and it would be like this kind of resurgence story. But I don't know. What do you think about that one, Keith?
Well, that's going to be interesting, right? Because that's being released soon. So that's going to have an interesting impact, because they didn't finish fourth and they've got a new season to start, like literally coming off the back of that. So the impact that we're basically going to see the behind the scenes of what happened last season as narrative building for the next season is going to be really, really interesting. It's interesting to see what obviously people are saying, that what good will have come with it. I think what good would come with it, if anything, would be probably what all of us saying. We'd all like to be a fly on the wall sometimes. We'd all like to actually see, you know, what really goes on behind the dressing room. But Steve made an interesting point as well in terms of just like, it's not what we do. And I think actually the culture of the club being quite, you know, I think Liverpool, you know, historically the town, the city, you know, like it's very much kind of like the special energy of Liverpool stays in Liverpool. Do you know what I'm saying? It's bottled there. It doesn't need to be
100%.
put on the television screens for everybody to see. Like
someone
else made a point about City needing to have that.
Do you know that's a good point, actually?
You know what I mean?
You know, all jokes aside, we joke, people joke, but the only way you're going to get more bigger is to do stuff. Like, people will joke, but genuinely, that's how you do it. Like, if you think about Amazon Prime as well, I know I have not watched that one specifically, right? But I am a fan of kind of sports documentaries.
Yeah,
like, I think they're quite a niche. So say, Steve, say you're not a Liverpool fan, say you're other side of the world and you're on Amazon Prime, and that probably does lift the publicity of that team, because it is like how many people watch The Last Dance by Chicago Bulls? I'm not saying they're the same kind, of course not, but there is this thing about documentaries. So I think was it Red Steve said that raise the profile. I think it's a good point as well.
City definitely used it as a PR machine. Rumor is Arsenal are going to just rename theirs Nothing, because that's what they got out of last season. So,
and you know, it wasn't. See, if they just were like 8th, right, and it wasn't like a close thing, it probably would have not been forgotten about, but just been. But the fact that they were getting there, then they lost to Newcastle, has made it even more like Arsenal-like.
Yeah, because people are going to draw opinions now of that, which is going to be interesting.
Like, you know, management in the last couple of games, like, you know, and it's like, are Newcastle now? Are they going to spend money better now? Obviously they've got a lot more, but like, are they going to be close to them in the next couple of years? Is this a foreshadowing moment? There's so many factors, and Spurs smashing them was like, well, Conte in the door there, are Arsenal going to catch? Guys, you're getting me excited for this documentary. I'm going to watch that. That's brilliant, right? Actually, whoever made the decision for that, well done, because it's probably going to be outstanding. But just the last part in the preseason before we move to the last two topics, guys, was just your thoughts. Just a quick one on this. obviously Taki, Origi, and Mane not at the club anymore, not at the pre-season. Did you feel? I don't know, it was only a small sample size, but was there any points where you felt like, oh, I think we're all a bit gutted certain players have left, but did you feel like we missed them at any point? Or for me, I'm probably at the stage where there's still too small a sample size, but I just wanted to get if you had any opinion on that.
No, do you know why? Because I've always been a look forward type of person rather than a kind of look backwards.
Half full, glass half full, glass
Yeah,
half full.
very much, mate. Yeah. That's the only way to live for me. I can't be anything else. But I genuinely get for me, it's like rather than going, oh, what could we have done there? It's like, oh, what are we going to do in the weeks, months, and years coming with all these new players in the football club? It's kind of the forward line 2.0, isn't it? So my interest is in how effective that becomes, and how quickly can we put to bed this idea that the Nunez thing isn't going to work, although we've spoken about that in detail. Those are important things to me. How Carvalho fits in. Conroy's point about Diaz is going under the radar a little bit, So those are the things that are about you, Keith. But those are certainly the things I prefer to spend my time on. I can't do anything about Sadio being a Bayern player now.
Well, funny enough, I may, we'll see, be at Eintracht Frankfurt Stadium for Bayern Munich's first game against them. Interesting enough, so I may see Sadio Mane's debut. So I won't get to miss him too much. But yeah, no, I think in terms of the Sadio Mane thing, I still think wasn't like it was on the table, but I think. Klopp, if you could have given him the choice at the time, he would have kept Sadio Mane, in my opinion. So I think his loss will be interesting to see how we adapt to it. And visibly, yes, because I think he always looks quite sharp in pre-season. But Origi, Taki, I think those they've served their time and it was time to go. So they usually show up in these and they usually have a bit of fun and they put their hat into the ring. But they did what they needed to do. But as I said, you know what? Seeing Carvalho for me is my hot take of the season. I think he's going to be the breakout star and probably one of the signings of the season. To see him in a Liverpool shirt for the first time, to see Nunez in the shirt, for Diaz in the shirt, Konate, all these players in a Liverpool shirt. I think that gave me a lot more joy than thinking about what we've lost.
Fair enough. I think that's. I kind of agree. I agree very much that I wasn't really thinking. The Mane one's an interesting one because Mane always looks years of just looking like, even when he wasn't playing great, Keith and Steve, but just that energy in pre-season he'd bring it. The one I thought about when I raised this point in the agenda, do you know Taki last year? Remember the games at Anfield? Steve, I think you may have been at this one. It was because I remember talking to about it, or maybe we just had a discussion on it. I think it was the remember when Shimikas, because Robert got injured in one game before it, and I think we won 3-1. But Taki actually played brilliant. I think it was when he took the ball down and he scored that goal. I thought he was great in that game. So that's what the first thing I thought of is, in pre-season, you've summed up there, Keith. They give you the hope that, well, they can maybe stake a claim for certain matches. And in fairness to Taki Minamino, he'd done his job and he performed very well. If you rated his season, you'd say probably about he got 8 out of 10 because when he needed to, he scored maybe even a 9 out of 10 because when he came on in the cups, he had to score. He got important goals last minute against Leicester. So a bit of me was like, do you know what? Fair play. I'll follow your career, mate, at Monaco. Hope you do well. But it was quite a nice little feeling watching the game, thinking, oh, he always, he done his duty in the cups. And to be honest, at the end of the season, that's the two things we won. So fair play to Taki and all the best.
I think just to sort of close on this one from my perspective is that you look at Taki, right? So we go and sign Nunez, we signed Diaz in January, we signed Carvalho. And in bringing those three players into the club, Taki's become even more further removed from a starting lineup place, every single week. So he has to have a look at his career and say, do I want to play away at Bournemouth and away at Lincoln in the Cup? Is that what my career is? And we've spoken about this with many, many different people. If he was happy to be a squad player, great, then fine, because he was very good at that. Like you said, Conroy came in and did what he was supposed to do. But for the good of his career, he probably felt he needed a move. And with Origi wasn't a great goal scorer. I'm going to be really cheesy here. He was a scorer of great goals, but not great technical goals, but great goals that you remember for coming off the bar, second one in the Champions League final. there were many games when we as a fan base we were frustrated because he didn't give us enough, but because he's iconic, because we love him because of what he did against Everton and stuff like that, we will always overlook those things, and the cult hero thing will come. The legendary status will rise to the top. But there were games when his performances were abject, and he really didn't give us anything. So in terms of, again, for him, 7th choice centre forward, go and reignite yourself somewhere else at AC Milan. So yeah, it was fun, particularly in Origi's case, to have him around because we love him. We took a shine to him, good, bad, or indifferent. It didn't matter. He was just Origi, and we loved him for that. But the cold facts are he didn't give us enough when he played. So, Champions League final, scores the second goal. If you can think back that far, for the rest of that game, to call him average would be doing him a favour. He takes his goal really well, but he was poor in the time he was on the pitch.
And it's a link up as well. I think it's like you want someone who can offer that, but can not say, I'm not saying be absolutely dynamite in a link up, but can press and offer more. And I think the way we came and we are now, when we first got him, it's all about pressing from the front to start with and being that first defender. And I think the one thing about Origi is you're never going to get that from him. And I think, you know what, I couldn't sum that up better. And with regard to Minamino, I'll tell you what, both of them got good moves though. Milan and Monaco.
Yeah.
Let's not look down on that. That's a good lifestyle there, good football. They'll enjoy it and they'll watch some Furman and see how they get on. And the BT Sport, you're watching there's always a French game on, so we check Minamino as well.
I'll definitely be watching the Serie A. That's a madness.
Yeah, no, you're a big fan, Keith. I remember you messaged me like a quarter in the season, and I was watching that Roma game where it was like the 4-3, but they had 10 men. It was a mad game of football.
It's a league made for Origi. It's a league made for Origi.
Yeah, I think he'll do well. So, segueing into then selling players. See what I've done there? That was quite all right. That was Grizz-like, that segue there. Today it's just been confirmed, or tonight, I only found out earlier that Ben Davis, and in the chat they shouted out earlier, has been sold. Well, looks like I think it's maybe approved, but it looks like it's going ahead to Glasgow Rangers for 4 million. So there's a profit on that. So, Keith, I'll get your thoughts. What's your thoughts on this? I was going to say your thoughts on Ben Davis's time. I suppose I will say that as well. But overall, what's your thoughts on the matter? And just before you do that, I just wanted to answer Pixelated Pigeon's question. I think this has already been answered in the chat, but I think it's 2 separate squads. So yeah, that's a good point as well. But Keith, on you go. Regard to Ben Davis.
I mean, again, I just would like to be in the fly on the wall for the deals. Forget doing an Amazon documentary on Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. Let's do an Amazon documentary on our directors of football and be a fly on the wall to watch how some of these deals take place. Do you know what I mean? Like how they make these decisions to go, okay, we're going to pick up this guy for Ben Davis, and we know just slapping the Liverpool badge on him is going to get us £4.5 million all this time later. And again, Liverpool are the way we do business. We are it kind of causes, it can cause debate, whichever way you look at it. I mean, look, if you look at our transfers, £99.2 million spent, 72.1 million pounds in outgoings. So overall net spend, said the word, is that we've actually, we put in 27 million pounds. Now, you look at that and you think to yourself, only 27 million pounds with all the money that Liverpool have made, surely we could go big for a midfielder now. But at the same time, I think it's ways we do this that allows us to keep making these big hits when the time is right. And it's sales like this that go really under the radar, because if you look over the years of some of the players we've let go, the likes of Kevin Stewart's, the likes of Solanke's, the likes of Brad Smith's for £8 million, these kind of
Jordan Ibe, well, maybe it's a bit different.
Jordan Ibe, 15 million quid. Liverpool's selling is fantastic, and so obviously as a result of that, we our net spend figures are great. The wheeling dealing is incredible.
Yeah, they all add up, mate. They do all add up.
They all add up, but they all allow us to build the squad that we've built at the moment. But you never know with this current situation, the way we're selling, if it needs be that we don't put in a big bid in January for Jude Bellingham, who's just had a successful World Cup. I'll just sprinkle that out there. But overall, great business by the club, and happy for him to go up to Rangers. There's a certain Ryan Kent that went up there and has torn it up. So there's definitely those before him who've been able to go up there in recent times and make an impact. I hope it kickstarts his career.
Steve, I think Keith, some great points there actually about the addition. You get me thinking. You both get me thinking. I didn't even think about that. And just like these little deals, sometimes they're not forgettable. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but sometimes you just see in a quiz question, you say, how much did you sell Ben Davies for in a year's time? I might forget. It's not something that stands out as this massive figure, but yeah, they do add up. And Steve, do you agree with that? Do you think it's this smart business is again brilliant for the club?
Yeah, absolutely. He went on loan to Sheffield United. He did well. So, and that's a championship is often a calling ground for Celtic and for Rangers to take players who still yet to prove themselves there to further their career, and then they get big moves away. We see that quite a bit. Bought for 1.5, sold for 4. There's nothing negative about that deal at all. I'm seeing on social media it could be as much as 4.6 if everything goes the way it should, which is insane. A kind of return for a player that never really pulled on a shirt in anger and never contributed anything to us, and will have Liverpool Football Club on his CV from a sort of a viewer's point of view, in terms of he sat and watched a lot and didn't do anything. And I know he had an injury when he joined and didn't get involved, and didn't get used at all in the season when we had no centre backs. I think that was a sort of a prelude to where we were going to go with this. But Julian Ward's doing amazing things to get 4 million or maybe 4 million plus for a player that has no sort of experience of playing for Liverpool Football Club to increase his price by that much. It's mad. It's crazy when you think some of the prices that players are going for. He's not worth that to me.
Do you not think though? Sorry to interrupt, Steve, but see when he's at Preston, I think he was in the last year of his deal or 6 months left.
Yeah.
So do you think maybe, because I think we are forgetting, like, he's not a terrible player, he's just not our standard. Like, I do think, like, Celtic were looking at Ben Davies when he was at Preston as well. So maybe it's just Liverpool have got him signed up. So for a team to get him now, like, to force off the competition, they're going to have to pay a bit more. Like, so say like a Sheffield United got promoted, they might have slapped 5 million and taken him, but because they didn't, you think maybe there's that in it as well,
Yeah,
Steve? This is actually his price.
Maybe you're right, yeah. And when we signed him, one of my colleagues at work who works over in Preston is a season ticket holder. I rang him and said, talk to me about Ben Davies. And he said, we're gutted. He's very quick. He's very left-sided. He's played in a 3. He's positionally really good. We think if he'd stayed with us 18 months down the line and had gone somewhere, and he might have got a bit of recognition internationally. That's how much the Preston fans thought of him. So it's a good move for him to come to us. It just didn't work out. You're quite right. We paid what is a nominal fee for a centre back these days, and we've almost trebled it. So it's absolutely brilliant business by the club.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Steve. I remember the reason I'm saying that, by the way, is just because obviously I'm based in Scotland, and I remember before we signed him, Celtic were looking at him for I think a couple of weeks. Now the reason I'm saying that is
that's true. Yep, that is true. Yep.
I think one of the things I've heard, and I've not seen for Liverpool, but is he can play out from the back. Like, he's a ball playing, he can play out as well. He's decent on his feet, and I think the difference is because if I'm not saying everyone in the chat watches Scottish football, but it can be, there is good football in Scotland. Not every team, I'm not saying that. However, looking at a championship level player and comparing him if he can't play for Liverpool doesn't write him up as his career. I think Rangers will look at him because Calvin Bassey looks set to go to Ajax for about 22 million, but what a piece of, you talk about business. They signed him from, I can't even remember actually. I know he played for Brighton, and then I can't remember how Bassey came about, but he was playing at left back and they played him at centre back in the Scottish Cup final there, and he was man of the match. So for them to get that profit, they'll probably look to get Davison and another centre back to play alongside Golson, who Gio Van Bronckhorst will try to play out from the back, similar to what Gerrard did as well. So they're probably looking, thinking, do you know what? Even if he's third centre back or he does start, he can play out from the back. He suits us.
Yeah,
and he is good enough for that level from what they've seen anyway. But at the time, I just remember thinking everyone was crying for a centre back. I think Liverpool just saw I might be wrong here, saw an opportunity for business for a little profit, and said, we'll nab him now if we're absolutely desperate. And they obviously deemed him not good enough, but they can just sell him in a couple of years' time and and we get some money in the bank.
100% correct, mate. And he's a good fit for a team that wants to play the way that Rangers played, and he'll be fine. And that's the thing that the lad from Preston, the season ticket holder, told me. He's a footballing centre half, and for whatever reason, I think he had an injury he couldn't clear up when he joined the club. So it works out well for the club in the end. We got to third place. We got to Champions League. We got a player in. We loaned him out. We got a small fee for his loan. We've moved him on. Joe Aribo went from wherever he went to Rangers and has now got a Premier League move. This is what Scottish football can do for players like this. It can propel them. So best of luck to him. I don't think anyone's got a bad word to say about the guy. If anything, had a bit of a rough deal. So I hope everything goes really well for him.
I agree. Do you know, it's ones like that you actually want people to. Sometimes we talk about all the time, and I say nowadays you've got either terrible or amazing. There's no in between. And I think sometimes people forget that you can be like a pretty good footballer, but just not be at that level. You know, there's categories, isn't there? So I think it'll be interesting to see, because a lot of people still were in for him. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not as if he's off the face of the earth.
I think that there's a couple interesting add-ons to this. The first one being that this was, I think, a move because of Brexit. I think Liverpool do a lot more in the UK now because of Brexit. It's harder to sign players, foreign players, and I think more teams are going to start doing this, well, are already doing this as well, probably from a younger age. And I think the second thing is sometimes you just need a training partner. See, there was a situation at one stage of Liverpool where they just had no actual centre-back. So when they're doing training, and remember, training takes up the majority of these footballers' lives, right? You know, obviously football matches, you get your 90 minutes, you know, sometimes twice a week. But Liverpool had no centre-backs at that time. So they just needed a player that could be in the training pitch that could actually play that position. Maybe it was the case that, you know, great in training, you know, and a decent cover. But Klopp kind of probably didn't see, not to the level that he can fight for an opportunity.
Not at that level, mate. Yeah, I get that. I mean? It's not the worst thing to say, by the way. Like, people, we're at such a level now that you need to be.
If you can be at a level on a training pitch with Liverpool Football Club, then you are at a 0.5% of the entire country. Do you know what I mean? So again, he had the ability to be able to fill in on the training pitch. I don't think Klopp ever saw that transpiring onto the pitch.
Yeah. No, I know people say like Reece Williams, Nat Phillips proved his worth. He was brilliant, and it proved. But I find this a curious one, because, you know, he done well at Sheffield United there. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on, because obviously I watched SPFL. It's one of them. It's going to be an interesting one. He might not start, but I think Rangers will look to, if they sell Bassey, they'll get 2 centre backs in, so it is cover or whatever. See how he gets on. But it's going to be interesting. But just on that, the last point, because you have gave me a chance to talk about the SPFL, and we'll never get to do it on this show. So this is the last one I'm going to say. You mentioned Aribo, Steve. I'm telling you right now, I'm not a football agent, right? I know a little bit about football, right? We have these shows. I'm telling you right now, in Scotland, there is numerous bargains to be had, and people really are wasting money on other targets when you could get. It's not even a gamble. For example, Joe Aribo, Southampton are probably going to get him for 6 million, maybe 10 million with add-ons, right? Joe Aribo was that flexible. He was a false 9 in the Europa League final and scored. He's never played up front in his life. He can play out in the wing. He's a brilliant midfielder. Honestly, that's a bargain and a half.
So are you, Connor, giving our viewers a tip on fantasy football? Joe Aribo right now.
Yeah, I'd say Aribo, like, is it depends though. You don't know if they'll start as many games. That's the thing with FPFL, Keith. But for one to have on your bench, I would go with Aribo, because look at Stuart Armstrong. Stuart Armstrong, no one really knew much about him in the Premier League. I know he was great at Dundee United, but even he still gets a game in Hasenhüttl's team. So for me, I could go on all day. Jota at Celtic's another one. They've got him for 7 million. What a bargain that is. Benfica put I think the selling's like 40% in that contract. That's how much they think he's a good player. And then also, just lastly to finish, this is the one that people are, it's crazy. I thought Villa would have went for him. Glenn Kamara, the Finnish international, is for me one of the most underrated players in the UK. And Rangers signed him for £50,000 from Dundee. He used to go to Arsenal's academy, used to play there. Genuinely, right, he is a baller. Like he is that's not a very good description, obviously. That's a bit of a cop out. As a midfielder, he's very press resistant and he's very good, right? Very agile. For me, teams are missing out because you could get him for a reasonable price. You get him for 6 million. And in the Premier League, 6-7 million, if it doesn't work out, is nothing. So I think teams are not looking hard enough, because if we've even looked at Calvin Ramsey, there's a reason Liverpool see obviously a space there and a market to get players. So just wanted to add that because whenever we get the
It's
opportunity.
very honest, mate. It's a very good appraisal, but it's almost a single-handed dismantlement of Scottish football in 2 minutes by Conroy, trying to sell everybody that's any good.
No, but there is bargains though.
Barron, we're playing under 18s.
What's
the contract on your life by Glasgow Rangers?
No. Listen, I'll build up. They've just got 22 million for Bassey. That's a precedent for anything. But with regard to the league, though, it's like I think sometimes it just gets written off of like there is gems in that league. That's for the money. It's a bargain, I would say. Let's see how Aribo does. But as Keith said, I'd see FPL on your bench. I'd go with it. And shout out to that as well, Keith. I don't know if you saw Grizz's recent tweet, but I think we're going to have an FPL show on the channel. Grizz will come out with more details in that. But listen, when you've got Mr. FPL up here, right, who just will go on about it every week, that and wrestling, that's all we hear in the chat. It's all we hear. But I'm sure Keith will be involved with that. So listen to that, because that's going to be very interesting. And also, if you haven't as well, I think Grizz has got his own FPL, what is it called? Your own team section or whatever it is. You can enter that draw as well. I think just go on his Twitter and his timeline. I'm sure that's there as well. So all good. So guys, I've loved the chat. We've got a few minutes, about 5 minutes left. This is the last topic. I appreciate it's been brilliant. Only 3 of us tonight, but honestly, love it. The chat as well, superb as always. Last point, right, is a bit left field. Going into this season, we'll just assume. I'm not saying it will be the case, but Man City and Liverpool probably going to be the front runners. You can mention, Chelsea, what they're doing. You can mention Spurs, the signings, but I think still a bit off. The gap between us is also the first time it's in a very awkward position. The dates for it was in November. It starts in December time. Now, out of the two squads, roughly, I'd say Liverpool have expected to have about 11 players going in that time, roughly. That might change here or there. And Man City, about 15, 16. Again, that might change, but roughly about that. Out with injuries, lack of form, whatever. That's what you're expected right now. I'll ask Keith, I'll ask you first. And it's not open, both of these guys can come in. Do you think this will have an effect on the season as a whole? And do you think it's like a specific advantage for either team, or do you think it's because it's such a novelty, so new, that it might not have that much because both teams will suffer? But I'm just thinking about the smallest percentages. It's 92, 93 points. It's that tight. Could this have a bearing in the long run?
I think so. I think you look at Manchester City's involvement. They've got quite a large contingent of English players. I'm not a lover of the quality of international football right now. I think it's sort of fell off a cliff. It's very open and there's not a lot of pressure on it, which is why we see entertaining games. 20 years ago, international football was like the creme de la creme. It was where you went tested yourself against Maldini and players like that. That's how you measured your career, because you play international football. Club football's got to such a level that international football has now fell away and isn't of the same standard. So I think England will go quite far in the World Cup, certainly quarters, semi-finals, maybe even beyond that, which will see certain players at City go quite deep into the tournament. Belgium will go quite far in the tournament. They're a good side, Kevin De Bruyne. The flip side is we've got 2 or 3 Brazilians that will play in that, and that they'll go deep into the competition as well, you would imagine. But Alisson will be in goal, so that's not massively taxing. He'd probably play a similar amount of games as he would at Liverpool. So I think if I'm making a case for a slight advantage for Liverpool here, boys, that's what I'm going to do, and feel free to shoot me down, Keith. But I think Manchester City's English contingent might just give us a slight advantage.
I think it's all gonna depend on how the season starts. I think you hate to lose momentum, but I think it's a major factor in the season. You effectively have 2 seasons. You have 2 seasons in one this season, because I think the World Cup is it's a distraction. a massive, massive distraction for a lot of players. A lot of players only ever get to play in the World Cup once every 4 years. For many players, this could be the last opportunity to play in the World Cup. You cannot look past patriotism. You cannot look past national, wanting to play for the national team and all the glory that brings. So I think that there's going to be two different types of seasons. And I think it's something that Liverpool can capitalize on quite significantly. I think there's a lot of big players that are going to be playing in the World Cup from all of our rivals, really. You look at the likes of Chelsea, they're going to have what most of their attacking players will be competing at the World Cup. You look at Manchester City, like Steve said, a large English contingent. Is Haaland going to the World Cup this year? Did they qualify?
No, did they make it? Did Norway make it?
Well, Norway didn't make it. No,
so that could work to their advantage. I think there's one interesting subplot to be taking place from a Liverpool perspective, and that is, I do believe Uruguay are going to the World Cup. Is that right? Yeah. Is Darwin Nunez? Honestly, Darwin Nunez could potentially have a season to remember because, of course, he's just starting off at Liverpool. He's starting off this season. He then goes away to Uruguay. If he can impact that World Cup and make a name for himself out there, he will explode. And I think he has the opportunity very much to do that in that type of situations. And it's a benefit for us. Another benefit for us, I think, is the Jude Bellingham situation. I think, I do think he's going to play a lot more of a role in this midfield. Obviously Rice and Phillips probably locked in, but I think he will play a lot in this coming World Cup. And I think that clubs are going to scramble for him in January. And I think it's going to trigger a push to sign him a lot quicker, because Dortmund will never get as much money as they can get for Jude Bellingham after what will be a successful World Cup for England. I think England are going to get to the semi-final or the finals itself, could even win the whole thing. And I think that will trigger a bidding war for Jude Bellingham, which I think we will be involved in for situations like this, not spending too much money in the summer. So those are two, from a Liverpool perspective, those two stories I'm interested in. From a general football perspective, I think it's a massive it will have a massive impact on this season. And I question, will it damage momentum to the team that skits off running and has a good start, and B, which players are going to be playing with their full heart in the first half of the season. It remains to be seen.
Interesting. I think that's momentum. I talk about that all season, Keith. I think that's a very good point. I think as well, I don't think it's rocket science to add as well that the player of the season, who he probably didn't end the season that great, let's not lie, a bit more quieter towards the end, but Mo Salah's not going to the World Cup, right? Luis Diaz, again, I've spoken about how much I think it's gone under the radar, not going to the World Cup. They're two potent attackers who get a break, which I think is a very good point. As much as, listen, I think he's burned out at times, looked tired towards the end of the season. Andy Robbo not going and getting a break in that, I think, is another one as well.
Two massive ones for us is the question mark over whether Fabinho or Thiago even get selected, or Fabinho does get selected but doesn't play, and Thiago gets to rest those legs.
I reckon he'll take Thiago though, just because even at the Euros there, he didn't always start him, but I think Enrique, I know he's not picked him, but I still think a formed Thiago probably takes him in the squad. Just that's my personal feeling on it. We'll see what happens. Could be the case. Firmino's another one though. If we still have Firmino, he might not go, and I think that might be crucial. I think for me, Jota does get played a lot, but we spoke about the injury there. That might not be whatever happens there. So the English contingent and Man City, Keith and Steve, very good points, because that is a big factor as well. Man City fans could turn around and say the Haaland thing as well. He could be fresh as well. He could be having the same season. He could be having in his life as well. It's all dependent. But as I say, when it's so close and we're at such a high standard now, where literally it's like a 0.1% chance can win you the league. Because it's that tight.
This is it, and interesting just on the Haaland point as well. You look at Haaland, you look at Mo Salah. Have South Korea qualified for the World Cup?
Not sure.
That'd be interesting to know.
If the chat knows, I've been looking at all the archives recently for the other ones, so I've confused myself about who's actually qualified for this one. So if someone can let me know if South Korea's qualified in the chat, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so think about it. Salah's not playing with the thought of representing Egypt in the winter. So this way he's going to start his season, it could be quite explosive and with good reason too as well. And the same with Haaland. I think them two could benefit massively. And yes, Son's going to the World Cup with Korea, Kane's going to the World Cup, Richarlison's going to the World Cup with Brazil, and will probably likely to be selected. You can't maybe people in the chat maybe tell me if you agree or disagree, but for me, I think that is going to play some part in the psyche as the start of the season goes. Maybe not the first few games, but as we get into Champions League, when Champions League begins, when League Cup comes in and those games start and the games start coming out thick and fast with the World Cup on the horizon, you're going to be thinking it's in your subconscious that you don't want to be injured and you want to make sure that you're fit and ready for the World Cup.
It's a really good point. Sorry, Conrad.
No, you go. See, on you go, mate. On you go.
There's about 14 games in October for everybody to make sure there's space to facilitate a World Cup. So imagine your Ronaldos, your Kanes, your Sons, all those guys you've just mentioned. Your Kevin De Bruyne who are thinking, actually, I need to not put my foot on the gas here because I want to go to the World Cup, because that would be the last opportunity for some of those guys. Kevin De Bruyne will be 34 by the time another World Cup comes around. He's got the ability to play there, but would Belgium have moved on, and it absolutely will be a last hurrah for Cristiano Ronaldo. So
yeah, we say that, Steve. We always say this, but I think he'll still have teams like playing.
He'll be playing for Portugal and he's 47. Well, we know this.
Yeah, he'll be one of those guys. Well, you could do it in international football, to be fair.
Yeah. In fairness, I give him his due. Obviously, he looks after himself well. That I don't think he'll retire in the next couple of years. I think that'll be his next ploy, because he wants to try and win at something. So then it'll probably be like the oldest. I know he's never there's a mental record in Asia for the oldest footballer, but you can just tell that'll be on his mind. You just know Leo Messi's going to finish, when he feels good and just be like, that's me, time to finish now. But Ronaldo's just going to say, need to win these points, need to get it. What is it? I'd love to have, what is the interview with Piers Morgan? I'd love to have more than that. And then he retracted that, which was a load of rubbish. So it's just like, you could tell that he's going to keep going, because in his head, which I think Messi's just kind of like chilled out a bit. He wants to win, obviously, but I think he's like, I could see Messi going to the MLS in a couple of years and just like enjoying his football, where what Ronaldo's going to be adamant, like he's chasing him for the oldest. I don't know. I just get that feeling from Ronaldo. So I would place a bet right now that Ronaldo will still be playing in 5 years' time.
Yeah, in China, somewhere like that, for
He'll
about
be still 100%.
About £9 million a week in China. Yeah.
Oh no, come on! Even now, he's been struggling to get teams to pay the money he's requested. So maybe China. You're right, Steve. But no, I think it'll be interesting. It's going to be fascinating, the World Cup, because even watching it at that time of year, it's just. Are you excited for the World Cup in general, though? Because I don't obviously have a horse in the race, but I love World Cups. So
yeah, I can see why Steve's going. Yeah, I don't. Was it Scout's not English?
I was going to say that. I knew he was going to say that.
Yeah, I think being obviously from London and being around here, it's you do get the buzz of the World Cup. I'm a big fan. I think it's going to be a fun Christmas, so to speak. It's going to be so much football on television. Imagine, you're going, and the funniest thing is as well, around Christmas time, you're getting like 2-3 weeks off annual leave anyway. Like, most of your annual leave's off. It's all Christmas parties. Everybody's in the festive mood. So you don't really need to even work that hard, really. You're just kind of going into it, and you're just going to have football on your television every single day while that happens. And it's going to be, obviously, the days are going to be shorter, so you're not even going to feel bad about being at home in the evening at 5 o'clock watching. I make that time up from what I remember before. I think maybe it might be. I think they're 4 hours ahead of us.
Yeah. So we'll have to find out, because obviously they've not actually. You don't know what times they're going to schedule the matches at, because I think they say that a bit later on. But I probably have something to do with the time as well.
Right. He is right. Scout's not English, right? That is definitely a factor, right? Because it just is. But I also find Gareth Southgate's tactics and Gareth Southgate to be the most boring things on the planet. I really, really struggle with. Every time he opens his mouth and then he falls asleep, his football's boring and he's boring. He's got all these attacking players at his disposal, and he plays 7 defensive players in a final against Italy, when after the first goal they were there for the taking, and I just sit there and I think to myself, why? You've got all these players. We were screaming at him to play Grealish more. We were screaming at him, and in the final, Mason Mount was absolutely dreadful, and he left him on the pitch for 100 minutes. I'm just not a fan of what Gareth Southgate does with those players. That doesn't help.
It's going to be interesting because, all jokes aside, I'm not really used to having a horse in the race. Like, you know, I'm very patriotic and love my country and stuff, but like, I'm not really used to having a Euros where my country was there. It was a bit of a surprise for my system, to be honest, because I go into it as a spectacle. Like, I love watching every game. Like, that's just not being funny, but that's the way when I've grew up, that's the way I've considered World Cups, because Scotland were never there. The one team I actually always like, and I've said this before, I've always liked Wales. Always like Gareth Bale and what they do. I kind of, that unity feels similar to Scotland. You know, I'm not saying exactly the same, but to me, that's a smaller country. That's the way I look at that. So I'm always looking for Wales to do well, and I think Bale just is a big game player. Simple as that. He turns up, and that's going to be an interesting one. But in general, I think the groups look amazing. I think there's so many storylines. There's so many players to watch. I reckon. No, I'm not going to say it. I thought Konate might actually have a shout at going, depending on how the season goes, because I know he's at the under-21s and I know he gets played a lot there, but I think he's better than somebody, let's say Kimpembe, who, my God, is the most erratic defender, I think, up there with Dejan Lovren.
Well, he could have a chance. He could have a chance, because there's talk of PSG letting Kimpembe go. And if that's the case, and Konate, because I think Klopp does favour Konate going into this season, I think that will probably be the centre-back pairing. So there's a massive opportunity for Konate to win a place. And again, that's probably a part I didn't mention. There's still players that are trying to win their place into the team. You look at Bobby Firmino as well. He's trying to win his place back in the Brazilian team. He'll be desperate to want to go to the World Cup. Henderson, ultimately, I'm talking about Bellingham kind of coming in and taking his place. He's got a point to prove. Trent, he'll want to go to the World Cup. He's got a point to prove. So there's quite a few players, like in Konate's situation, the French situation. There's an opportunity there to actually go and represent your club in a few months' time.
No, I think it's spot on. And Red Steve just confirms the kickoff's 10:147 UK time. Thanks, Red Steve. That's really helpful, actually. A 10 a.m. kickoff. Wow. Watching Messi against, who's in the group again? If it's one of those games, or just to be honest, any football game in the World Cup, there's always a storyline. There's always a player. It's just, I love it. Football on like normal TV, or like, you know, the standard TV channels is just nostalgic. Love it. But yes, guys, thank you for the show. Brilliant. Thanks to the chat. Just before we finish up, Keith and Steve, anything else you wanted to add? We've covered a lot. I've loved it. But is there anything else you wanted to add before we finish? Actually, we've got something. It's just came in. It's not just came in. He sent it about 5 minutes ago. Mustafa, as always, so consistent, more consistent than any of us on this show, with the question for Keith.
That's a great question. Will Theory cash in? I don't think Theory cashes in yet, but it's a great opportunity for Theory to cash in, because if you want to get the belt off Reigns, this is going to be the best way to do it. Otherwise, he's going to be the champion for the next 365 days. And I don't think we want that anymore. So yeah, hopefully, but I'm not convinced. Great question.
Brilliant, Mustafa, as always. Everyone, make sure you smash the likes as well. And obviously, just give us a little comment as well. See how your thoughts on the show and the topics, and anything we can chat. In the next couple of weeks, we'll try and get another quiz and draft potential with the draft, because Evan's our man for the draft. We're trying to set it up, and Steve was particularly encouraged to have that, because he was he particularly enjoyed it in the chat. He was like, make the draft happen, because Evan does take it to the next level. Like, it is scary how good he does it, to be honest. So hopefully we can get that organised soon.
It's one of the best things I've ever done on this type of
environment. It's so good.
Absolutely ridiculously cool. I was blown away for days after that how good it was and how much work that guy puts in. So if he's watching and he's feeling a bit better because he's not feeling so cool at the moment, keep up the good work, Evan, because that, mate, was absolutely awesome.
No, it was. So just on that then, guys, anything else you want to add before we go?
Good.
Oh, good.
No. Just hit the like on the way out. We haven't got enough likes for the people that have been in today. So if you've enjoyed what we've spoken about, that's how you say thank you, kind of thing. Do it for us, guys.
No, absolutely, guys. But anyway, to everyone, thanks for listening in. And again, the chat was awesome. Thank you, guys. Steve and Keith, as always, brilliant. This has been REDFELLAS on Sunday night. There'll be shows during this week, Grizz, quizzes, with your daily Grizz, your transfer stuff. There'll be tons. Keep an eye on social media and on the YouTube notifications. But just everyone, and we'll catch you soon. Take care and good night.